race 2 of the weekend for the European GT4 series, and the cars on their formation lap working their way around the Dunlop curve on a road that is damp but drying. We've had a lot of rain in the last couple of hours or so. The previous race had to cope with a very wet track indeed. Well, things have improved a little, but it's still a real test for the drivers, and in this race, where it will be the pro drivers starting, they potentially are going to have the harder work, because they're going to have to decide exactly how hard they can push on a circuit that is neither really wet nor dry. There is a dry line, go off to overtake, and you might find yourself in a bit of strife. The pro drivers go first. It is a 1 hour race. The AMs will do the second stint, and the earlier race was a very lively one indeed. It was notionally won by Ricardo van der Ende and Bernhard van Oranje, but because of an issue during the course of the race, whereby that car had tagged another one at the very first corner, a penalty was given to it, and a consequence of that was that it did not win. Instead, the BMW in question finished 5th. So Duncan Houseman was the man, along with Luke Brahms, who was able to celebrate honours in the first race of the weekend in the European GT4 series from Jörg Wiebahn and Brutus Sanders, and then for third place Marcel Nuren and Jan-Joris Verheugen. And so the cars are just about ready to get underway for what is going to be a 60-minute race. Mandatory pit stops, and the field accelerating its way then now towards turn 16, and into the pit lane comes one of the Ginettas. Now that, he says quickly, trying to identify, is either the Salvador Tinio or the Lorenzo Marcucci car that has come down the pit road. So the cars are about to blast away, and as they do so, we have the lights go out, the race underway, and it is Salvador Tinio who has come down the pit lane. So he will start from the pits, and I wonder whether that's an inspired choice about tyres. Diving up the inside then as they head towards turn 1, the two Chevrolets together, and Houseman it is who goes into the lead and runs out wide in a spin there, right the way round goes the BMW. It's the number 8 that's lost it and rejoins after damage in the first race. So drama right at the very start. The field tiptoeing their way round on this opening lap as through into the lead goes Houseman, but for how much longer, because Jan-Joris Verheugen is right with him. Then you've got the Porsche running in third place, the car in the hands of Bertus Sanders then, as they accelerate now up towards the exit of turn 4. Sanders going strongly, and in the background the blue BMW of Rob Severs also looking quick in this first stint. The grid's slightly strange in as much as there was no Aston Martin from the outside of row 1 after dramas for Eric Behrens and Daniel Roos in the first race. And so as the cars then now accelerate downhill for the first time back into the race after its pit lane start has come, the 888 number Ginetta of Salvador Tinio. So downhill for the first time come the race leaders, and having tagged a car at the start of the first race, so now there you can see the damage on the back of the number 1 BMW. This time though, Ricardo van der Ende it is who's been in strife, and the fact that there's rear damage suggests he was rather tapped into that spin, but van der Ende with work to do. Oh so frustrating that the race 1 win never really happened, and now as the cars accelerate their way up towards the Warsteiner S for the first time, the race-leading race-leading Camaro, I should say it is, that has the advantage in the hands of Duncan Houseman. You can see 1 or 2 of the cars rather patched up after race 1, but it is Houseman ahead of Verheugen, ahead of then Sanders in the Porsche for the moment. Bertus Sanders running in third place, and everybody has been warned by the race director that the chicane is very wet, and this is the chicane into which they now come. So the field turning its way through the corner. Race leaders accelerate their way now through to the completion of lap number 1. And there the trim hanging off the back of the number 1 BMW, but Ricardo van der Ende is on the move, so he tries to come up alongside 103 and get past Koen-de-Witt as the leaders come over the timing line. At the end of the lap, it is Houseman who leads the way, but at the inside comes Jan-Joris Verheugen. These are teammates in the same V8 Racing squad, and they are absolutely side by side, and Jan-Joris Verheugen tries to go around the outside, but he can't do it. The cars now blast through the Mercedes arena. Verheugen tries the inside line. Is he going to be able to make it stick? He's got the dry line, but then back on the inside comes Houseman, and that puts him briefly on the dry line, and then off the road altogether and sideways goes Verhoeven, who just about salvages it and get it back on the road. But now that means that Berta Sanders comes up into second place in the Porsche and might just have the momentum to challenge for the race lead as well. Duncan Houseman it is then leading the way. Now Ricardo van der Ende down in 9th place at the end of that opening lap after his spin. There is progress still to be made. In 4th spot at the moment, it is Lorenzo Marcucci. In 5th place, chasing his Ginetta, is Franville Bugliotti, and then the top out at the moment by Rob Severs, with the blue BMW going strongly in this first stint. Van der Ende, perhaps not surprisingly, has just done the best of anybody in Sector 1 as he tries to get himself back into contention. Race leaders work their way through the Schumacher S then now. Through the Warsteiner sequence of corners for the second time. 60-minute race, and there attacking is Ricardo van der Ende, who comes up alongside Lorenzo Marcucci and easily goes through the proper GT4 spec BMW, gets itself ahead of the leading Ginetta, the Ginetta G50 Cup Italy. Effectively no more. The cars instead have found a happy home in this European GT4 series. So they come then up towards the completion now of lap 2. Van der Ende riding the curb. Now can he and his co-driver Prince Bernhard van Oranje salvage a win out of this race to make up for the big disappointment of race 1? Race 1 was full of penalties, because also penalised in that race was the Ginetta of Manuel Insigne, and a big spin for Sanders down at turn 1. He's going to delay him badly, assisted by the Camaro into that, so penalties might fly at the end of this race as well. Berta Sanders sits in the road waiting for a gap and holding his breath to try and make sure that nobody ploughs into him, but he's going to drop to the very back of the field. Can he even get the car going? A big flash of flame out of the back as he tries to fire it up. And it's still sitting there, and it's still kicking out flame, and it still doesn't want to restart. We are being told that the incident between the two V8 Racing Camaros is under investigation, and Ricardo van der Ende has carved his way into contention now, because he's now onto the tail of Jan-Joris Verhoeven. So up front it is Duncan Houseman leading the way. Verhoeven, then delayed in his incident with Berta Sanders, is having to try to repel van der Ende. See the damage on the back of the Ecris Motorsport BMW as it heads uphill now. Up onto the curb ahead goes the Chevrolet, but it's Camaro's 1-2, and van der Ende has done a pretty good job recovering after his spin. What about Berta Sanders' car? Has that got going once again? At the moment it has got going, but a long way down the order, so I wonder whether anything's going to come of that incident as well. It's not yet come up that it's going to be investigated, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't. So the Camaros, first and second, working their way towards the chicane ahead of Ricardo van der Ende. Again, race with mandatory pit stops, and so the second stint goes the way of the amateur drivers, although the soloists perhaps again have the advantage. They can cope with the track conditions as they change. Franville Bugliotti, who drove well in the first race to recover from a spin, was another penalised for overtaking under a yellow flag, so he got down to 7th in the end. And also penalised was a 888 Jesse Antela Salvador Tinio Ginetta, and that got dropped down into 6th place. And Tinio, after his pit lane start now, is still at the back of the order. Still got work to do as the teams look at the timing screens down in the pit road. Now this is a replay of the start. The one to watch is the BMW of van der Ende as they come down towards the first corner. What clips him? It is a Ginetta. Bang! Round he goes. That, looking at the way the grid had lined up, I think was the Manuel Lasagni car that clipped him. And with a double biff, van der Ende quickly rejoins, but it didn't take him long to work through the pack, did it? Because we're only on lap 4 now, and he's back up into 3rd place. So Ricardo van der Ende, as if having his win from race 1 taken away wasn't enough, then being turned around at the first corner of the second race has really got him wound up now. So as the race leaders work their way down towards the Dunlop curve, we're on lap number 4, and the advantage for the moment is held by Duncan Houseman. in the Chevrolet Camaro, BMW X-Boat of years past, and of course it was for BMW he won the 24 Hours here. The race leaders turn from the Dunlop curve, uphill once more. Rob Sebez is the man in the blue BMW there. That's actually dropped down the order a little bit now, so he's lost ground over the first couple of laps. The car that he's fallen behind is 103. Koendewit at the wheel of it. Koendewit hanging on to that place for the moment. And 103 is one of the cars that runs in the GT4 guest class, but it's going strongly. DeWitt shares that car with Peter Stocks. This is a replay of the Camaros getting themselves together and then allowing the Porsche to sneak past. And now a replay of what happened to Bertus Sanders. He turned in across the front of Jan Joris Verheul and bang. The incident between the Camaros is now going to be investigated after the race. Nothing at all, we are told as yet anyway, on the screen, about the incident involving Verheul and Bertus Sanders, which you've just seen the replay of. So, although he's back in the race, Sanders now is down in 16th position. The leaders come over the timing line. First 10 minutes of the race just about elapsed, and Duncan Huisman now is trying to build this advantage over Jan Joris Verheul, his teammate, who in turn is bringing Ricardo van der Ende with him. The incident between number 1 van der Ende and 27 Luca Mangoni was, who turfed him around at the first corner. That's going to be investigated after the race. Trim trailing championship leading BMW of van der Ende, which has 172 points and 143 of Bertus Sanders, and Jörg Wiebahn is there in third place on the road and right onto the tail now of Jan Joris Verheul. So is there going to be an opportunity for a place change between these two? Let's see as the cars once again power downhill. As we had in the first race, it's interesting to compare where the BMW is stronger and where the Camaro is stronger. It's a great looking car, the Camaro, but the BMW, perhaps more associated with touring cars, the M3 than a GT car, is a Pucko GT4 spec machine, and it's there right on the tail as they power uphill once more. The lead gap is 2.6 seconds. These two are lapping on the pace of, but not quite as quickly as those ahead. Duncan Huisman heads towards the Warsteiner S once again. Second and third still run together. Ricardo van der Ende, as we saw in the first race, when he had to catch the car of Jan Joris Verheul, was able to do so and then did find a way through, and then Verheul fell away. So is it going to be the same situation? Can van der Ende find a way through? For as long as he's stuck there, of course, he's losing time relative against the race leader. And then the next part of the race is to see who the faster will be out of the AMs, namely Luc Brahms or Prince Bernhard van Oranje. I suspect it may well be van Oranje. Van der Ende gets a very good run out of the chicane. Now thinks about the inside line into the final corner, can't quite do it. That Camaro is a big old beast to find a way past, and Verheul positions it well, so up towards the line they come. Race leader goes through. Huisman is now 2.7 seconds ahead. Jan Joris Verheul runs second. Third, and looking for a way past there is the BMW as they come now into the braking zone. The cars now sprinting their way once again through this Mercedes arena. And if anything, van der Ende has just lost a length or two, but he's right back on the pace at turn 3. Tries to have a look up the inside. You can see how the road continues to dry. It's not drying quickly, but it is drying. And what was a completely wet circuit about an hour and a half or so ago is now certainly drier online. But to do the overtaking, and that's what van der Ende has to think about, he's got to go to the damp offline part of the circuit. Certain parts, and this is one, look like it's dried quicker than other bits of the track. But with just under 48 minutes to go, it should be a lot drier come the end, assuming that just no more rain falls. Down to the Dunlop curve comes then for second place Jan Joris Verheul, still keeping at bay Ricardo van der Ende. They sprint uphill. So Duncan Huisman and Luc Brahms, the race 1 winners. The Porsche second in race 1 after all the penalties were applied. Jörg Wiebahn and Bertus Sanders. And then Marcel Nuren and Jan Joris Verheul third. And it's their car that comes now up towards us, fending off Ricardo van der Ende as they work their way through this next sequence of corners out of the left and right, the Warsteiner S, and then the road drops downhill. Van der Ende not near enough there to make a move. Can he force a mistake out of Verheul ahead of him? through the Ad Van Bogen, they'll come in a moment, and then uphill, heading towards the chicane. Run wide onto the grass creek there, but no worries about track limits. Now, how's the Ginetta situation getting on? Lorenzo Marcucci here is keeping at bay Franville Bugliotti for 4th overall and for the Ginetta class lead. These G50s that are very competitive in GT4, they've taken outright wins this year. It's a good scrap between them as they work their way through the chicane. And to the inside comes Bugliotti, but can he find a way past? No, he can't. They turn their way through the corner, accelerate now up towards the timing line once again, and as they do so, it is going to be Marcucci ahead of Bugliotti, and then behind them, look, in 6th place, going very strongly indeed in this second race of the weekend, is Andre de Vries in the BMW that was rather troubled in race 1 when it was in the hands, and it had contact early on, of Marcel van Rijswijk. The Ginettas side by side, Bugliotti to the outside and trying to go all the way around on the outside line there, but he can't do it. A car that's surprisingly not working its way up the order very much is Hendrik Still's Aston Martin that led the first race, but it's a long, long way down at the moment, that car. Sprinting their way out of turn 4. Still running together, the two Ginettas, but in fairness, Lorenzo Marcucci doing a good job of hanging on to this place. Franville Bugliotti tucked up behind, and then getting closer and closer all the while now is Andre de Vries in another of the BMW M3s that runs in the guest class. Admittedly, it's a pretty big gap 3rd to 4th, but these two Ginettas giving a good account of themselves. And then when you get to the second stint of the race and you put the other drivers in the cars, a whole different race will take shape as well. So they work their way out of the Dunlop curve, uphill once again they come. Heading up towards the Schumacher S, out of which the race leaders now go, and then to sprint their way up towards the Warsteiner S. And you can see the BMW that's there in 6th spot becoming ever more menacing now as it gets closer and closer and closer, and a big lose from Marcucci sends him all the way through 360 degrees. Hooks first gear, gets back into the race, but I'm afraid that Lorenzo Marcucci now is 2 more spots down the order, and that puts into the Ginetta class lead effectively at Franville Bugliotti. Van der Ende looking on, sorry, Van der Ende's co-driver looking on, I should say, Bernhard van Oranje, and he sees Van der Ende hustling his way onto the tail of Jan Joris Verheuvel as they come over the timing line. The BMW thinks about the inside. Is it going to be possible to find a way through there? The answer is no. So as the cars now work their way up from turn 1 round the Mercedes arena, all of this is enabling the race leader, Duncan Huisman, to get away. He's lapping only about a 10th a lap quicker than those behind. So you get a replay here of what happened to Marcucci, and he just got himself on the wetter part of the road. The car broke traction. Now, the other car to look for in all of this is Salvador Tinho, who was the one that made the pit lane start. He's hustling on, but still way, way down in 14th place. So we never got to the bottom of the pit stop, whether it was a late change of tyres or for a problem to be repaired. Either way, he's not making his way up the order in the way that he needs to. However, Bertus Sanders is getting on with the job, and he now has done the absolute best in the first sector, so the Porsche is getting a little bit quicker. Leaders currently are on lap number 8, and it's an advantage of just over 2 seconds between Duncan Huisman and then Jan Joris Verheuvel, who has still got this constant shadow of Ricardo van der Ende, but van der Ende not being able to find a way past. Some good battles all the way through the order here as well, as you can see the mix of cars as the Ginettas and BMWs go head to head. 101 is the BMW in the hands of Thomas Fjordbach for this first stint of the race. Field then making its way through the S's, and Rob Severs there, the blue BMW, hanging on to 7th position for the moment, working his way through the Warsteiner S, still being chased hard as well by Andre Grammatico in the BMW M3. Grammatico, vastly experienced driver, trying to get into the mix as well here, and we are not that far, relatively speaking, away from the pit stops, but the pros will go as far as they possibly can in all of this. The road continues to dry, the sector times continue to improve, and And Rob Severs now under attack, I think, as well, because right on his tail in 103, the car that Peter Stocks will take over is Koen de Wit. And the two BMWs with de Wit, the quicker, come out of turn 17, absolutely nose to tail, out of the Coca-Cola curve then, up towards the timing line now. Rob Severs will have to defend as they head past the pits, and right behind the pair of them, trying to join in as well, is the next of the little Ginettas as well. Roberto Gentili's car tries to join the mix, as now to the inside goes de Wit. Can he line up to make a move up on the inside line? Thought about it. Can he force a mistake out of Severs? Yes, he can. Severs goes wide, uses the runoff, loses the place, skips back onto the circuit, but that now puts Koen de Wit up into 7th place. And the BMW at the moment, number 4, Rob Severs' car, will be quicker in this stint. Many of them will be quicker in this stint, given that the co-drivers are less experienced in the main. There are some evenly matched, but largely there's a real difference in pace between the Pro and the Am. And of course the soloists, like Francisco Villabugliotti, can come into the mix as well, because the car can run at the same pace for the duration. So the race leader is already on to lap number 9. The gap is still hovering about the 1.8 second mark. But this BMW fight developing nicely as the cars set off downhill once again. There for second, it's still Verheul keeping at bay Van der Ende as they get ready for the run up towards the Ad Van Bogen, this being lap number 9, and still 40 minutes of the race remain. The race leader, Duncan Houseman, you get the feeling he's just dropping into the clutches slightly of the charging Verheul and Van der Ende battle, because his lead is not looking quite as secure as once it did. Cars now work their way into the chicane once again. Again, Van der Ende gets that good run out of the corner, but not able to take advantage and sprint up the inside of the Camaro, now going into turn 17. They work their way up onto the pit straight, so the lead gap last time was 1.8 seconds between the top two. It's gone up, in fairness, to 2.2 seconds, and now Van der Ende makes his run down the inside, heading into turn 1. He's a long way back relative to where he needs to be to make the move, and he's not going to get up alongside before the braking area. So still, therefore, Jan-Joris Verheul hangs on to second. Ricardo Van der Ende third as they work their way into turn 2 now through this Mercedes arena. And Van der Ende running out of options. He has found it very hard indeed to get past this Chevrolet Camaro. Remember, he's worked his way up from the back after his first corner spin, right onto the back of the Chevrolet, and there he has been stuck, but he gets a good run out of turn 4. Can he now get the run up alongside? The answer again is no. Lower down the order, others still struggling to work their way through the pack. Bertus Sanders in the Porsche after its spin, still 15th, and ahead of him Salvador Tinio is still only in 14th spot. So drivers not finding it at all easy to get through the traffic, it would appear. Prince Bernhard van Oranje looks on as he sees Ricardo Van der Ende on that last lap do absolute best in sectors 1 and 3, but he still can't find a way past the Camaro, even down at the Dunlop curve where he brakes late. There's still no opportunity to get through. Now uphill once again. The BMW a little bit battered after its incident at the first corner. Whether it suffered in any way other than just bodywork, whether it did anything to the suspension, we know not, but a real good use of the curb there propels Van der Ende up alongside. He's on the outside line, but he does go through, heading into the Warsteiner S. Finally, Ricardo Van der Ende goes through them up into second place. It's taken him the best part of 7 laps in order to do that, but he's made it stick at long last. And so now, as the cars work their way once more towards the chicane, we have got Van der Ende 1 place higher up, and he's chasing after Duncan Houseman. It was the other way round in race 1. Houseman was chasing after Van der Ende, briefly led but got the win with the penalties applied. But now Van der Ende, released, is throwing partly caution to the wind and partly BMW to curb, flings it out of the chicane through turn 17. And now he can see the race leader ahead of him. It's not just about a race win for him, it's also for his co-driver, the bill payer in all of this. So over the timing line comes Ricardo Van der Ende. 2.9 seconds is what he has got to try to reduce. He's lost a bit of time on that lap by overtaking, but he's hunting now down the race leader as they work their way into turn 1 once more. Now, pit window is only a couple or so minutes away from opening, but with these being the pro drivers, the quicker drivers, they should stay out that little bit longer. But one car that you might anticipate to come in and kind of split the distance is number 888, the Ginetta of Salvador Tinio and Jesse Antela, because they're both comparably paced drivers. So, Van der Ende up into second place and hunting down the race-leading Camaro in the hands of Duncan Houseman. Over the line comes Koen de Wit, ahead of Rob Severs, ahead of Andre Grammatico, and then running behind them is Luca Magnoni's Ginetta. and a big squeal of tyres going into turn 1. Have they all survived? They have, more or less. A great variety of lines being deployed, but they've all managed to wriggle their way out of the corner. But there, under pressure now, is Grammatico, because right up behind him is the Ginetta of Luca Magnoni. Magnoni going strongly actually in this race, although he got himself in the walls a little bit in race 1. Grammatico's BMW M3 then hangs on to the place being 9th at the moment. Race leaders currently on lap number 11, pit window imminent. 24, which is the Ginetta that had its spin early on, is currently down in 6th place. This is the car with Lorenzo Marcucci at the wheel of it, trying to get himself onto the tail of the BMW that's being hustled on at the moment by Andre de Vries. Now this, Ricardo van der Ende BMW, is still not really getting away from Jan-Joris Verheul, so he's in the first sector giving away half a second or so to Houseman. In the second sector, a couple of tenths. Looks as though when we get to the pit stops, it will still be the Chevrolets ahead. Chevrolet first and third as a combination. Out of turn 17 comes the BM, up towards the timing line now. Past the pits comes van der Ende, and the gap really has shot up now to 3.7 seconds. Perversely, just when you thought van der Ende should be bringing down the gap because he was finally out of traffic, the gap opens up, and that may well be Houseman upping his pace once again. Yes, it was, because he's just done a personal best lap. So Houseman quickening the pace so that there's a greater advantage when they get to the pit stops, and also to try to make sure that there's no chance of that BMW catching the Camaro before the very end. Don't forget, of course, that the second part of the race is all down to the differing pace of the co-drivers. Verheul doing a much better job in this stint than he did in the first race, because he's staying with van der Ende and put up a much more spirited defensive position as well. So the pit window is ready to open. Those at the back actually could take advantage of it, given the track position and coming much earlier. As through with the pit window now open goes Jan-Joris Verheul. Just over the timing line has gone Bertus Sanders in the car that he shares with Jörg Wiebahn. And so Prince Bernhard van Oranje is ready for the Racing Team Holland to take over. Looking at the timing screens in the Oman Racing Team compact garage. So who's going to come in at the end of this next lap, if anybody? As I say, the pro drivers, the quicker drivers will stay out that little bit longer. And proof that the road is drying now comes in the fact that there's a lot more curb being used there by the car Ricardo van der Ende. The first pit caller is in fact, and it's 107, Hendrik Still, who was at the back of the field anyway. So very disappointing stint that by that car. Hendrik Still pits to give way to Stefan Retzlaff. Driver change takes place. One out, one in. But that car potentially will go down a lap, of course, against the race leaders. So Duncan Houseman, winner here of the 24 hours, continues to lead the way, being pursued vigorously by Ricardo van der Ende, who is starting to edge away from the third place Camaro of Verheul. But is he doing anything about the leader? The gap's 3.9 seconds. That time around, no. Again, 2 tenths lost by van der Ende. So the Camaro, at the moment, has the advantage. It was a really gutsy drive by van der Ende in the first race, but just wonder whether the contact and the impact early on has given that car more than just bodywork damage, because if it's a little bit twisted somehow, then it's not going to be 100% sharp. It is going to affect the pace that it has. Koen de Wit ahead of Rob Sebers here. This is the BMW battle for 7th place. Into the pit lane has just come Lorenzo Marcucci's Ginetta. More come pouring in. Andre Grammatico there in the Espace Bienvenue BMW down the pit road. And there's another Ginetta, I think, that's crept in behind him as well, which I suspect is Luca Magnoni. Right, in comes Marcucci to give way now to Stefano Stefanelli. There is the BMW of Grammatico, and the Ginetta in question, in fact, was Manuel Lasagni, who's been a bit disappointing in this race. Lasagni attacked nice and early in race 1, but he struggled in this race. 27 on his toes, though, now. The Ginetta there of Luca Magnoni up the inside, and he goes through to put a move against Koen de Wit, so he puts himself ahead of the BMW. That is now 7th place for Magnoni. In fact, make that 6th, because with Marcucci having come in to give way to Stefanelli, he's into the top 6 now, chasing after Rob Sebers. Still half the race remains, 32 minutes plus, as they're running in number 103 BMW, Koen de Wit. Again, when you've got the quicker driver, so they will stay out for as long as is possible. Order shuffling when the pit stops start to really get underway. There's not that much to choose, in fairness, between Marcucci and Stefanelli, so that's another reason why the pale blue Ginetta has come in a little bit earlier than 1 or 2, the Nova Rangoni car. BMW's attacking the curbs with vigour, coming through the Schumacher S. Koen de Wit doing his level best there to fend off Roberto Gentili, who is the next one to try and line up and have a go at him. Meantime, the leading gap is up to 3.8 seconds as Duncan Houseman continues to do his level best to hustle the Camaro into a more commanding lead for his co-driver Luke Brahms, but then you come back to the situation out of the co-drivers. Is Brahms quicker than Prince Bernhard van Oranje? And that gap could well be nibbled into come the second stint of the race. Roberto Gentili having a look at the inside of Koen de Wit as they come into the chicane. Can't find a way through there, however, but he's a very, very quick driver out of the chicane. But equally into the pits comes Koen de Wit, so the BMW now will serve its mandatory stop. Down the pit road comes Koen de Wit to give the way to Peter Stocks now. Meantime, the leaders are on lap 14. Down the pit road, more and more BMWs, because also in has just come 101, which is the Sorg Rennsport car. Thomas Fjordbach to give way to Eric Berggren, the car's regular driver. But up front, 3.7 seconds at the first sector, split the leaders. That means it's come down a little relative to what we had at the start of the lap. So Duncan Houseman, it is, still leading the way. Pit stops cycle through. Love the way you put your hazard lights on if you're a BMW owner to warn people you're making a driver change. So Koen de Wit gives way to Peter Stocks. This is Thomas Fjordbach giving way to Eric Berggren. And that car in a moment ready to blast back into the race. So they have to serve the mandatory time. Race leader in the meantime in traffic, about to put a lap on Stefano Stefanelli now, who's taken over 24 Ginetta. And there is Duncan Houseman with Ricardo van der Ende chasing in the background. Houseman driving every lap on the limit, comes from a good motor racing family. His own successes are well documented. Nurburgring 24 winner, Dutch touring car champion, BMW star, won the gear race at the Cow on 3 occasions. His brother, Patrick Houseman, multiple Porsche Super Cup champion, and father Ben Houseman, senior Dutch race official for many, many years. He was the clerk of the course at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix, amongst other events. So out of turn 1 comes then the Camaro. At the wheel of it, it is Duncan Houseman. The advantage he's got now is 3.5 seconds, which means it came down slightly on that last lap. Now, how is Rob Sever's BMW getting on? He is starting to be attacked a little bit, I think, a little bit more, certainly, by the rather pesky Ginetta behind him of Roberto Gentili. Into the pit lane ahead comes Magnoni, and from behind, Gentili pits as well. And there's another one that's cycling through also. 104 has just bailed for the pit road, so Andre de Vries gives way now to Marcel van Rijswijk in another of the BMW M3. So the order continues to shuffle, but not for the lead, because there's no indication yet of the leaders electing to make a stop. Over the line also has just gone 888, which is Salvador Tinio. Having started in the pit lane, he's got himself now up into 9th spot, but he has to make another pit stop, of course, within the window. And that window has got 3 minutes and change before it closes. 27 there, which is Luca Magnoni's car, serving its mandatory stop. One of the Nova Rangoni team cars. And in the background is Roberto Gentili, who will rejoin also after his mandatory stop. So that gives us now something like 7 cars that have still yet to make their mandatory stops. And in all cases, it's because the quicker driver is trying to go to the bitter end of the stint. Is 107 Aston creeping up the order? No, he's not. And a drive-through penalty is being given for number 14, which is the Manuel Lasagna Ginetta. That crossed the white line at the pit exit. So Manuel Lasagna, who I said had been a bit disappointing on pace anyway, he's going to lose even more ground. He's got to serve a drive-through penalty. Race leaders then working their way up towards the end of the lap, and Van der Ende, interestingly, pits this time, whereas Houseman stays out for another lap. So Ricardo van der Ende comes in, perhaps, given that there's only a couple of minutes of the window and a lap is 2 minutes 8, not wanting to risk it. So in he comes, and also in is Jan Joris Verheul. So the BMW now goes to Prins Bernhard van Oranje. The Camaro will go the way of Marcel Nuren. But they are still, therefore, going to have one more lap against a much quicker driver in the person of Duncan Houseman. So His Highness awaits his car to be delivered to him. And the hard hand, Ricardo van der Ende, brings him a rather dog-eared BMW, but it wasn't entirely Ricardo's fault, seeing that he got biffed into a spin at the first corner. So, gloves off, unplugs all the cables, kneels down as you do to a prince, and now straps him in, ready for this second stint in the car. Gives him some advice as where it's slippery and what the car is like after its contact early on. Helps with the belts. You can see the pipe there as well, just through the driver's window to get a bit of cool air into the car. And the team counting down the pit stop. The tyre technicians making sure that the tyres are still good for another stint. More and more pour down the pit road now as well. Franville Bugliotti is in. Also Rob Seber's BMW is in. Salvador Tinio's Ginetta is in. Bertus Sanders in the Porsche that was knocked into a spin early on is in as well. I think the team have also tried to rip off any flailing bodywork, so the car should be good to go. Ricardo van der Ende, work done for the weekend, because this is the last race for these cars. He walks away, stands to see the car depart as soon as it's got to the end of the mandatory stationary time. And another drive-through penalty is being offered up now, and it will be for Marcel van Rijswijk for speeding in the pit lane. So a BMW that had been going well is now going to be given a drive-through for speeding in the pit road. So the Dutch team, which had a really disappointing first race with damage at the first corner, about to have a decent result snatched away by the look of it. As into the race goes Bernhard van Oranje. Now he has got to do lots of things all on the same lap, such as get used to the car, the track conditions, and also go absolutely flat out to try and win the race against this car that comes into the pit lane now. Duncan Houseman then to give way to Luke Brahms, and he's going to come into the pit lane, crossing the white line with about 11 seconds to go before the window closed. So time to perfection that, to gain one more lap out of the car. In he comes. Down the pit road rumbles the Camaro, and Duncan Houseman ready to give way to Luke Brahms, one of the prime movers behind this GT4 European Series. The pit lane is now closed, so if you've not been in to make your pit stop, you're in strife, but I think everybody was in at the requisite time. So, where will this car be by the time the Camaro of Luke Brahms rejoins the race? That's the question. Can Bernhard van Oranje then come through either in the lead or indeed battle into the lead? I have the suspicion that he will be the quicker of the two, and so the advantage that Duncan Houseman has tried to build up was a fairly slender one. Bernhard van Oranje hustles on now to try to get himself into contention, and with 24 minutes to go, this car could still win the race. It won on the road in race one, but for a penalty, van Oranje turned around Francisco Bugliotti at the first corner, and so a penalty was applied, and a 10-second penalty for what was termed an avoidable collision eventually dropped them to 5th spot. This was the car that won race one, and about to get going is Luke Brahms, the wheel of the Camaro. Off the road at the chicane, over the curb, over the grass, back onto the road, Bernhard van Oranje. So, I did say he had to go absolutely flat out on this first lap. He is doing that, but very nearly came a cropper. He's sideways out of the Coca-Cola curve as well as he hustles on. There's the car he's chasing, as into the race now comes the Luke Brahms driven Camaro. Chasing after him is Bernhard van Oranje, and so the first sector will get a proper idea really of the gap between those cars. Van Oranje is really throwing caution to the wind here. He knows what he has to do, and in a car that is a bit second hand, you've got to admit he's doing everything he possibly can. So number one, BMW in second spot, hunting down the race leader. The pit window is closed, and again Van Oranje is in danger here of throwing away the race by making lots of mistakes, because he was so rapid out of turn 3 that he ended up running a bit wide and finding himself on the wet part of the road. We've had Carmageddon amongst the Ginettas by the look of it, because one has ground to a halt in the pit lane. There was bodywork flying, and the slow Ginetta, which has pitted with a problem, picks up pace once again. Now the two that have come in, one of them is Lasagna for his drive-through, and the other is Luca Magnoni. And we have now 1 second stop-go penalties being applied, one of which goes the way of the 888 Ginetta of Tinio and Antilla, and the other is to number 101, Thomas Fjordbach and Eric Bergram. a 1 second stop go penalty. The pit stop was too short by 1 second, and therefore you have to come and make a stop go to make up the difference, the shortfall. But of course you lose more time by driving in and out of the pit lane, so it's a rather more time-consuming penalty than it first sounds. This car that was well placed, led the bulk of race 1, now has got Jörg Wiebahn at the wheel of it, and it's running in 10th place ahead of the BMW hordes, where at the moment Andrea Grammatico is keeping at bay the all-blue BM that's now been taken over by Lisette Brahms, the wife of Luke Brahms, who of course is currently the race leader. But that Porsche going a bit more strongly now, so could it creep up the order, helped by penalties for others? It's a possibility. We're on to lap number 18. The first race, which was dry, had 25 laps, so that's kind of the target, but I'm not convinced we're necessarily going to get to that, as the leaders are currently working lap 18, and the gap is 6.3 seconds then between Luke Brahms and Bernhard van Oranje. That is the gap he's got to try and make up. He was quicker in sector 1, quicker in sector 2, and so even though we've seen van Oranje making the odd little error, he's hustling on, he's bringing down that gap, and he's got time enough, 21 minutes still, in order to bring down the gap sufficiently to have a go. There is the third place car, now Marcel Nuren at the wheel, having taken over from Jan Joris Verheul, and he turns into turn 3 now as the leader, comes out of turns 5 and 6, that next S that takes you downhill towards the Dunlop curve. Those that have got to serve stop-go penalties, the Ginettas are doing just that at the moment. As downhill comes the race leader, but Luke Brahms, we'll see in a moment whether he's lost time in sector 1 relative to van Oranje. The answer is actually he's gained a 10th, so is the pendulum swinging back in favour now of the Chevrolet? Van Oranje, under normal circumstances, would be the quicker driver, but if he's making these little errors because he's over-driving, then you can understand why the situation is starting to change. Now behind, as you see the Ginettas working their way out of turn 1, Marcel Nuren is not lapping as quickly, so he's falling away a little bit. But the other car that might be starting to speed up is Franville Bugliotti, because he in 4th has done a personal best lap last time. Remember, he's the best placed soloist. Jörg Wiebahn goes to the inside line there to gain ground and puts himself now 1 further place up the order. He's just got himself past the BMW 104 that's gone into the hands of Marcel van Rijswijk and still has to serve a penalty, don't forget. So van Rijswijk loses out on track to the Porsche. Sole 911 GT4 in the race. The other BMW pounding on behind as well, but starting to be a bit more of a threat is Andrea Grammatico, so it's going to be a good M3 fight, I think, before much longer. With 19 minutes to go, these two cars now working their way up towards the turns, the Schumacher S's. Now towards the Vorsteiner curve comes Jörg Wiebahn, and the way that Porsche is going now, what progress further can be made? The next target is going to be Roberto Gentili's Ginetta, but that actually is quite a long way up the road. Andrea Grammatico trying to get himself onto the back of Marcel van Rijswijk's BMW. So in the meantime, Lisette Brahms dropping away into the clutches of the 101 M3 behind, that's now in the hands of Eric Berggren, but that has still got to make its stop-go penalty, I do remember. So that car, the red and white BMW, the middle of these 3, has got to make another stop. Here too is Marcel van Rijswijk under pressure now from Andrea Grammatico. The experienced Frenchman has got himself back into the mix as they come now up towards the timing line. Past the pits they come. The BMW battle on track is for 7th place as they go through. And also trying to join this fight, as you can see in the background, in 103 is Peter Stocks onto the back of Lisette Brahms' car. Brahms in turn battling with van Rijswijk. Squeal of tyres herald the arrival of somebody out of turn 2, but it's ahead of this BMW group. No yellow flags emerged, so everyone has survived. 17.5 minutes to go, lap 19 we're now on to. Although van Rijswijk hasn't taken his penalty, the message about that has gone away, so maybe he's going to hope that the whole problem has disappeared. Grammatico to the inside of van Rijswijk. Can he find a way by? Not there, he can't. two BMWs getting themselves together. Grammatico heads downhill, having got himself onto the tail of Marcel van Rijswijk's car. Coming down, and Van Rijswijk makes the mistake at the Dunlop curve, leaves the door wide open as a consequence, and up the inside into position goes Andre Grammatico. That gives him 7th spot, and proof that the road is still greasy enough to catch you out. So a mistake made at the bottom of the hill. And this, for the race lead, is the new situation where the gap has come right down between Luc Brahms and Bernhard van Oranje, because the gap from being over 6 seconds earlier is now down to 0.4 of a second. The BMW looking very dog-eared indeed, but hey, it's the last race of the weekend, so it's almost expendable. And as Van der Ende and Houseman watch their co-drivers at play, it's all out of their hands now. Van Oranje does look the quicker of the two. 16 more minutes to run. Can he find a way up the inside? Not here, he can't. Is he near enough to attack as he works his way down towards turns 5 and 6? The Camaro again defends resolutely in the hands of Luc Brahms. Down the hill they go once again, heading towards the Dunlop curve. Wide up onto the curb goes Brahms. Has Van Oranje been able to take advantage of that? Let's see, as the cars now dive down towards the Dunlop curve once again. Heading into the braking area through the right-hander. Powering uphill, the Camaro it is that hangs onto the race lead. And now Bernhard van Oranje trying to work out exactly where the traction may be, where the BMW might be the stronger, and indeed whether he can force a mistake out of the race leader Luc Brahms. Behind them, up into 3rd place now, admittedly 14 seconds, nearly 15 seconds back, is Franville Bugliotti, but in the first sector alone, he's taken the best part of 2.5 seconds out of the two ahead of him. Number 104, Marcel van Rijswijk, has not taken his drive-through penalty and is now being given a black flag. So although it had gone that message line off the timing screen, the penalty hadn't gone away, and so a black flag for car 104 looms. But if these two continue to squabble and hold themselves up, then Bugliotti may well catch them before the very end, because he's absolutely charging now. Way up onto the curbs goes Luc Brahms as they come out of the chicane into turn 17, the Coca-Cola curve. And two rather more ominous clouds looming overhead as well. Can we get to the end of the race without any more rain falling? Leaders come through them. Up front, powering over the timing line, Luc Brahms. Van Oranje looks at the inside, looks at the outside, down to the very wide turn 1. With its variety of different lines to be employed. Here are 2 of them, and a tighter one is taken by Van Oranje, who gets up alongside almost, but on the outside line then for 2 and 3, so he has to cede the place and slot back in behind the Camaro. If he can stand his ground on the outside for the next part, he'll have the inside line as the road switches to turn 4. But to do that, you've got to go offline. He is right back onto the tail of the Camaro. The BMW looking the quicker of the two now, but just not quite able to find a way around this oh-so-wide and, in fairness, well-driven Camaro. Still 14 minutes of the race remain as they head downhill. Currently on lap number 21. We did have the safety car period in the first race, which meant that we didn't get 25 racing laps in, because a number of them, of course, were done behind the safety car. So this potentially to run a little bit longer as they come down towards the Dunlop curve once again. And to the inside looks Van Oranje, and a big slide by the Camaro. The door is left open and the BMW goes charging through up into the lead. Duncan Houseman's demeanour is rather different from Ricardo van der Ende's. One happy, one rather less so. So it is van der Ende's car ahead of Houseman's car. Van Oranje now the co-driver ahead of Luc Brahms. And he should be able to pull away. Let's see whether that is the case, or can Brahms fight back. Equally, Van Oranje has not been without error in the race thus far, and so it may be that the pendulum swings back in favour of the Camaro if there's a mistake to be forced out of the race-leading Royal. To the chicane they will come then for the 21st time. 13 minutes still to run. But after that move, so Bernhard van Oranje has pulled away in the sole car from the Ecris Motorsport team in this race, because the sister car damaged in race 1. There was lots of repair work going on in the brake, but not enough, I'm afraid, to get it into the race. So that car, like Eric Behren's Aston Martin that was badly damaged in race 1, didn't make the start. Now there is Franville Bugliotti. He runs 3rd. He was 15 seconds back a lap ago. He's now 11 seconds back. And let's see what it is at the end of the next lap of the race, because the leaders have gone by and the white Ginetta comes towards the timing line, 8 seconds adrift of the leader. There, hustling up the inside, is Stefan Retzlaff to go past Lisette Brahms. So that gives the Aston Martin now 15th place. It's a long way back, in fact, that car, after earlier delays. It's not really sparkled in the way that it did in race 1. Hendrik still having had hardly any track time in race 1 before he was turfed into the gravel. An intriguing little Ginetta scrap building up here as well between Magnoni and Gentili. Luca Magnoni ahead. Roberto Gentili's car is the rather battered example behind, with the Italian stripes, the tricolor across the top of it. Out of the Ad Van Bogen they come towards the chicane, and these two are squabbling over 13th place, which might not sound a lot, but it matters clearly to Gentili, who goes up the inside, and he takes the place away from Magnoni. So the two red Ginettas switch around, and Roberto Gentili then gains 1 further place. We still have the black flag being shown to Marcel Reiswick, but he's not that interested in taking the penalty, I don't think. The message comes up on the timing screen. The flags are there for the drivers to see, but the car for the moment continues in 10th place. 11 more minutes of the race to run. Up front, Bernhard van Oranje is getting away now. He's being able to build that gap over Luc Brahms in 2nd place, but Brahms needs to be on his toes because another second in the first sector alone taken out of him by Franvio Bugliotti in the white Ginetta. At 14 Ginetta is Manuel Lasagni. Now he's had a penalty in the race, but has recovered up into 8th spot, going after Andre Grammatico. And the last lap that Grammatico did was a 2:13 and Lasagni was a 2:10, so that's going to change before the end. And there Lasagni is taking with him Jesse Antela, the Finn, the ex-Formula 4, Formula Renault racer. Now he's also joining that mix in a car that started from the pit lane down towards the Dunlop curve. Grammatico trying to defend as they work their way into the right-hander. I think he's on borrowed time here. Those two Ginettas getting very towy indeed to try to find a way past. The leader has gone by 2 seconds ahead as the Ginettas run side by side uphill, and Jesse Antela goes through on the inside. Good move. Uses the curve on the second part of the Schumacher S, but that gives him another spot, so it puts him 9th. And now Jesse Antela is the man to go after the BMW of Andre Grammatico. Andre well into his late 50s now. Jesse Antela still early 20s, so you've got one of the stalwarts of the championship against a real career racing driver. Antela switching from single-seaters to GT cars to try and move his career in a different direction. And having got himself up past Manuel Lasagni, so Lasagni falls back behind Antela. Antela to the inside into the chicane, places his for the taking. He does it on the inside line, so the pale blue Ginetta goes through. And number 888 then now works its way up into 7th place. 2 spots gained in a lap. Jesse Antela really is charging here. Co-driver Salvador Tinho looks on in the pit lane as the leaders come over the line. So, with 9 more minutes to go, Grammatico is going to lose another place. Manuel Lasagni up the inside in the red Ginetta. That is for 9th and 10th places. And through goes Lasagni up on the inside. Gets it crossed up, exiting turn 1, but survives. And the BMW M3, which is a Pucker GT4 spec car, the Ginettas, although they are running in a GT4 championship, are from their own one-make series. Now there's another BMW in trouble. 103 parks by the side of the road, and that is Peter Stocks out of the race as that parks. So into the pits after its black flag has come 104 BMW of Marcel Reiswick. Now 24 attacks now for 4th place. This is Stefano Stefanelli, who easily goes ahead of Marcel Nuren. And as far as 2nd place is concerned, this has been a very impressive drive by Bugliotti from a long way back. Now he makes his move up on the inside. The Ginetta virtually dwarfed by the mighty Camaro, but he's got the tighter line, and Franvio Bugliotti goes through up into 2nd place. Now, can he do anything at all about the race leader? He's 3.7 seconds back. That was a 2:10.0. The leader has done a 2:11.7. It's possible he might get up there by the end. So Franvio Bugliotti charges on. He started 8th on the grid. Although Luc Brahms tries to come back at him, the Ginetta driver is not going to take any kind of retaliation. So he stays in 2nd spot for the moment. But Van Oranje now needs to be on his toes, I think. 7.5 minutes remain. But Bugliotti becoming ever more of a factor. It's helped in part that the car, with a quick driver at the wheel of it, is now mixing it against the so-called AMs that in many cases aren't as fast. It also helps that Bugliotti has been behind the wheel of the car race long, so he knows exactly what the machinery is doing, and he's got a real feel for how the track has improved. It looks a heck of a lot drier now than it did at the start of the race. There is Luke Brahms down in third place and falling away as well. Is he going to be caught by anybody else? No, he's 21.5 seconds ahead of the next car. So the question now is whether Franville Bugliotti can snatch a win away from Van der Ende and Van Oranje. The next Ginetta fight is Jesse Antela ahead of Manuel Lasagni. That is down for 7th and 8th at turn 1. Andre Grammatico behind them. And BMW, immaculately presented, but not looking as rapid now as the two Ginettas ahead of it. So after a rather bruising race 1, race 2 has been perhaps more decided by penalties during the course of the race, because there have been quite a lot of them floating around, both in terms of drive-throughs and stop-goes. And in the pits is the Marcel van Rijswijk BMW, and it ain't going anywhere after that black flag was shown to it. 6 more minutes on the clock as you see the Ginetta number 14 of Manuel Lasagni trying to get back onto the tail of Jesse Antela as the cars go downhill. Out of the chicane comes the race-leading BMW, and look at the way the gap has come down from 3.7 at the start of the lap. Ricardo van der Ende watches on, but sees the gap coming down and down and down now. Over the line, Bernhard van Oranje goes through. Bugliotti is 0.8 back, 3.7 becomes 0.8 of a second, and barring a mistake, it looks as though this race is Bugliotti's for the winning, doesn't it? The way that he's just hacked away at this gap, 5.5 minutes to go. It's going to be 2, maybe even 3 laps now. Looks very good indeed. A tighter line taken out of turn 3. Doesn't urge the car at the inside at turn 4, but you just get the feeling it's when now, not if, Bugliotti goes through. Down towards the next sequence, turns 5 and 6, nose to tail they come. Bugliotti pulls out and pulls back in again. He'll know where it's drier, he'll know where there's more grip, and you can see how much quicker the Ginetta is, virtually pushing the BMW downhill now. Out of turn 6, Van Oranje runs wide up the curb, and now Franville Bugliotti tries to get the inside line downhill. The Ginetta, a lighter car, goes for the inside line, and the lead is his for the taking. Franville Bugliotti goes through, picks up the race lead, and there is nothing that Bernhard van Oranje can do to fight back. Ricardo van der Ende still forces a smile and still hopes his co-driver will push on. Of course, they're going to win that class, which matters for the championship, because that is a proper GT4 car, whereas the Ginettas run in the G50 class. But in terms of an outright win, it looks like it's going to go the way of Bugliotti, because having gone ahead of the BMW straight away, he's pulling clear once again. They come downhill once more. Meantime, other Ginettas, immaculate and otherwise, continue their squabble. 77, which is Roberto Gentili's car, is ahead there of Luca Magnoni, and he has now got the Aston Martin Stefan Retzlaff right up behind him, so they've all worked their way past Andre Grammatico. Retzlaff's car coming good, but a bit too late in the race really, having lost chunks of time right at the very start. 3.5 more minutes remain as the cars head down now towards the Dunlop curve. Retzlaff, who led the first race briefly, wants to try to find a way here up past Magnoni's Ginetta. But Bugliotti leads now. 1.5 seconds he managed to pull out by the end of the laps. It's been an extraordinary drive this, as the road has dried. The Ginetta has just got faster and faster and faster. In third place now it's Luke Brahms in the Camaro. Fourth runs Stefano Stefanelli, and there off the road, back on again, Luke Brahms. So the third place Camaro got it wrong at turn 1. He recovers, that would have lost him time. And I just wonder whether that might help Stefano Stefanelli's Ginetta to get a little bit closer before the end, but they're running out of laps now. 3 more minutes to go, that's all. So this car that dominated the first stint when it was in the hands of Duncan Houseman, we see the Aston Martin leaping over the curb as well. So still pressing on is Stefan Retzlaff, but getting caught out a little bit at the chicane. Andre Grammatico's BMW tries to catch back up again as they come over the timing line. So the race leaders are in the middle sector. They should squeeze 1 more lap out of this race. Give us 27 in total. Down towards turn 1 goes Retzlaff in the black Aston Martin. Turns his way now through the right-hander, hunting down Luca Magnoni's Ginetta, but also getting away from, as you can see there, the BMW of Andre Grammatico. Wide out of turn 4 goes Roberto Gentili in the car that got involved early doors in the race against Van der Ende, hence the damage. And the Corvette there is that of Marcel Nuren, which has just lost out to Jesse Antela because he has worked his way up. Yes, it is Jesse Antela who's worked his way up another spot, and going with them as well is Manuel Lasagni in the red Ginetta, but also on that lap. So Nuren has lost out to the Porsche by the look of it, because Bertus Sanders has got past him as well. So tumbling down the order has gone Marcel Nuren. The leaders go through. 2.9 seconds is the gap, and again Bugliotti lapped quicker last time around as they start the last lap now than did Van Oranje. So another race, perhaps not with the same three abreast action that we had in race 1, but with an awful lot happening, largely because of track conditions and different pace of drivers affecting the order. But when it matters, Franville Bugliotti is going to be the race winner, unless he flings it off the road on this last lap. Behind him is Bernhard Van Oranje, set to win his class, and then Luc Brahms running in 3rd place in the better of the Corvettes. Van der Ende looks on. So the BMW in 2nd spot heads downhill for the last time, but ahead Franville Bugliotti is set for a race victory, and in a season that has given Ginetta's occasional outright victories, this would be the first for him. Lasagni has had an outright victory, but this, as have also Tinio and Antela, but this will be the first outright win for Bugliotti, who makes his way up now towards the final few corners. He had a second at Paul Ricard. He's going to go 1 place higher on the podium in the equivalent race, the second race of the weekend here at the Nurburgring. They've got races at Monza still to come for the end of the championship season. A number of team managers now being summoned to see the race director as well post-race. I think the order over the line may not necessarily reflect the race result, but as far as Franville Bugliotti is concerned, there's no report for his team manager, and so it looks as though he is going to be penalty free as he heads towards the last corner, into which he turns now. Flag is at the ready, and so race 2 of the weekend for the European GT4 series is going to go the way of Franville Bugliotti, because victory at the Nurburgring is for the Argentine driver. Franville Bugliotti wins. He comes across the line victorious ahead of Bernhard Van Oranje and Ricardo van der Ende, and then 3rd across the line should be Luc Brahms in the car started so effectively by Duncan Houseman. Despite he's off, but he's very nearly caught at the end, look, by Stefano Stefanelli in the blue Ginetta, who is right with him as he comes up towards the timing line. So hanging on in there is Brahms. Stefanelli finishes 4th, and 5th is going to go the way here of the Porsche. Bertus Sanders, the sole Porsche driver on the grid, comes then now through turn 17 up towards the checkered flag, and in the end a lonely 5th place, and it will be ahead of Jesse Antela in the blue Ginetta, but now, having started in the pit lane, comes through for 6th spot up towards the timing line. Over the line goes Antela, and behind him Manuel Lasagni will be 7th. Here is 77 Ginetta that is set for 9th place, because Marcel Nuren's Camaro, fading towards the end, is 8th. 9th is Gentili, 10th is Magnoni, and then 11th is going to be Stefan Retzlaff, as Ricardo van der Ende can celebrate 2nd place, but importantly a class win. The Van der Ende brothers, Jackie his brother, a very rapid racing driver himself, and so he now makes his way towards the podium. The rest of the field come pouring over the line, including the BMW 101, brought home by Eric Berggren despite an earlier penalty, and Lisette Brahms coming through for 14th place. So race honours go to Franville Bugliotti, with this BMW in the hands of Bernhard van Oranje coming home for second spot, and then Duncan Houseman and Luc Brahms for third. But a great drive by the Argentine to score race honours. Bernhard van Oranje's rather dog-eared BMW there, making its way towards the Parc Ferme area, into which will already have come the officials to receive Franville Bugliotti's car that will be the first down the pit road. There you can see, coming to the inside of turn 17, what's left of the BM of Prince Bernhard van Oranje. And Franville Bugliotti sees the yellow flag, slows the car right down, and stop the car ready to make his way to the podium. So the scrutineers will make sure that all is as it should be with the winning cars. You can see the orange sticky tape put onto the back of the BMW in the pit stop to try and hold it together. And that did its job sufficiently well. Also there, entering the Parc Ferme area, is Luc Brahms in the Camaro. And as the drivers clamber out, they'll head to the podium in a few moments' time. So Bernhard van Oranje out of the car. Franville Bugliotti will make his way from the Ginetta. There he is in the Ginetta overalls. And Luc Brahms gets out with a bit of help from the, in the end, third placed Camaro. And those drivers will go to the podium in a moment. Celebrations get underway. There is Bernhard van Oranje. And we can hopefully have a word with him in a moment.
Two very tough races today.
Yeah, you can say so. I think Ricardo did the toughest part by being hit and had to recover completely from the back. In my part, I mostly had to watch. There was some rain on the back and the car was not really in best shape, as you can see. So I was just listening to the radio, see what I had to do and take no risks, and I could take it home. So very happy, yeah.
Excellent, well done.
Okay.
So the first GT4 car home is the BMW. The second GT4 car home is the Camaro. There is Luc Brahms, having clambered out of it. And very, very happy Ecris Motorsport squad with another class victory, which is what they need in the championship, of course, with the Ginettas having their own private fines in their own class. They're of less concern, really, for the purposes of this. So as Ricardo van der Ende embraces his royal co-driver, so they will, in a moment, go to the podium. Let's confirm the race order at the end. It was Franville Bugliotti ahead of Bernhard van Oranje and Ricardo van der Ende. Then we had Luc Brahms and Duncan Houseman ahead of Stefano Stefanelli and Lorenzo Marcucci. Jörg Wiebahn fifth with Bertus Sanders ahead of Jesse Antela and Salvador Tinea. Then Lasagni clear of Nuren and Verheul. Gentili 9th, Magnoni 10th, Retzlaff and Stiel were 11th, and Andre Grammatico in the end fell to 12th spot. Eric Berggren did get it home in 13th ahead of Lisette Brahms and Rob Severs, but then the others we lost either with mechanical dramas or penalties, so 14 finishers at the end of the race. A quick look back at how the race panned out with the pro drivers doing the first stint. Duncan Houseman it was who had the advantage for the first corner, but it all rather kicked off behind as Gentili's Ginetta went for the inside line, tagged Ricardo van der Ende into a spin. Van der Ende was able to get himself going once again, but he had a lot of places to make up, and the Corvettes nearly came to grief as well. Investigated post-race, so on a slippery road, sideways cars everywhere. The Corvettes continued their duel all the way around the first lap as Jan-Joris Verheul went round the outside of the sister car. But then Verheul had a go to try to get past Bertus Sanders, and he did find a way past in rather unsubtle fashion. The Porsche stalled and could not restart, and it lost the best part of half a minute before the car was back in the race. Another spin came from Lorenzo Marcucci, and that dropped him behind Franville Bugliotti, who in the end would go on to win the race. A good early BMW battle was on between Rob Severs and Koen de Wit, but when Severs went wide, de Wit went up the inside and managed to snaffle away the place. More Ginetta dramas as well down at turn 1 as the 77 Gentili car ran off the road. But then the battle really took up attention. Van der Ende eventually finding a way past Jan Joris Verheugen and was able to squeeze his way past. More problems amongst the Ginettas as they came to grief. Gentili being effectively tagged into a spin by the errant car of Magnoni. That spun into the pit lane entry road. It fired up and got back into the race. As then an error came out of Luke Brahms, and that put Bernhard van Oranje into the race lead. But it was a lead that wouldn't last for long. Off the road had already been Stefan Matzloff, but then Franville Buglotti it was that worked his way up into the lead ahead of Franville Buglotti, and the Bernhard van Oranje BMW fell behind the Argentine who came through to score the race win. So, Ginetta scores victory, the BMW the first GT4 car home at the end of race 2 at the Nurburgring.